They left me out of the family photo. We didn't think you'd make it here. So I quietly left the house. 3 hours later, they were locked out of the mansion I just bought. It started with the photograph. I hadn't even taken my coat off when they began gathering on the front lawn. Aunts smoothing their hair, cousins jockeying for center spots, Grandma waving everyone into place like she was directing traffic. I stood there at the edge of the crowd, a ghost holding a paper plate of deviled eggs, watching as Uncle Steve peered through his camera lens. "All right, everyone smile." A moment before the shutter clicked, Aunt Melody glanced in my direction, squinting. "Oh, wait, don't we need to?" "Nah," said my cousin Ryan, one arm slung around his fiancée. "We didn't think he'd make it here anyway." Laughter. Quick. Casual. Like it was just one of those throwaway comments families make. And just like that, the moment passed. The shutter clicked. Everyone smiled. Everyone but me. I set my plate down on a plastic table and turned back toward the driveway, unnoticed. They always saw me as the underachiever. The one who stayed too long in his hometown, who worked odd jobs, while everyone else climbed corporate ladders, launched startups, got degrees and engagement rings. They measured success in LinkedIn headlines and holiday cards, and I, quiet, awkward, never good at selling myself, simply didn't fit the mold. What they didn't know, and never bothered to ask, was that while they were climbing, I was building. Not in the spotlight, but in silence. I taught myself code at night. I flipped junkyard laptops into sleek machines. I started a business that grew in the cracks of their conversations. And over the years, I made more than enough to buy the largest property in the county. That very mansion just a short walk from here. But I never told them. Not because I wanted to surprise them, but because I stopped needing their approval long ago. Still, I showed up today. Some foolish part of me hoped they'd changed. That maybe this time, I wouldn't be invisible. I was wrong. And now I was walking away. The first drops of rain hit the pavement just as I reached the end of the driveway. Thunder rolled low in the distance, like a warning. But I wasn't rushing. I had all the time in the world. Let them enjoy their smiles in that photo. They had no idea what was coming next. By the time I reached the gates of my property, the sky had turned the color of bruised steel. Thick clouds hung low, pressing down like they were part of the mood I carried in my chest. The keypad on the gate blinked softly in the darkening light. I punched in the code, a small thing, just 6 digits, but it felt like sealing off the world. The gates creaked open, and I stepped through as the first real gust of wind whipped behind me. I didn't bother turning on the lights as I entered the house. I liked the darkness. The silence. In the marble-floored foyer, my shoes echoed. The chandeliers above glittered faintly as lightning flashed through the skylight. I climbed the stairs, loosening the tie I wore only to appease them, not because I ever liked how it sat on my neck. At the top, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked over to the wide balcony overlooking the neighborhood. From there, I could see their cars still clustered in the driveway of the old family house, headlights off, the party still in full swing. And then, almost on cue, the power in that house died. One by one, the windows blinked dark. It started slow, just a few people stepping outside, confused, peering up at the sky like the weather was personally targeting them. Then came the scramble. Kids crying. Flashlights flicking on. More and more voices rising. They didn't know I was watching from the hill. Watching as the wind picked up and the rain came in sheets. My mansion, barely finished last month, stood alone on the ridge, sleek, modern, glowing faintly from backup generators I had installed without a second thought. Let them wonder who lived here. Let them speculate. And then it happened. I saw Uncle Steve pointing. One by one, they all turned. I could only imagine the conversation. "Didn't someone say a tech guy bought that place? I heard it's someone from California." No, it's probably just an investment thing. No one actually lives there." But desperation does strange things. One of the cousins, maybe Ethan, was the first to start walking up the road, jacket held over his head. Then 2 more. Then the entire caravan. They trudged through the rain, shoes sinking into soft grass, their coats soaked through, squinting against the downpour. I took another sip of wine. And waited. It took them about 20 minutes to reach the gates. By then, most of them were drenched and shivering, hair plastered to foreheads, dresses clinging awkwardly, dress shoes ruined. They gathered around the iron gate like lost travelers who had taken a wrong turn into a storm they hadn't prepared for. There were murmurs, "Who lives here?" and when someone reached the keypad, I watched them hesitate, unsure of what to do. Then a finger poked at the intercom button. A sharp buzz echoed through the mansion. I didn't move at first. Just stood there, glass in hand, letting the buzz die out. Another press. Then a voice, and melodies, hoarse and uncertain. "Hello? Is anyone home?" Behind her someone, probably Ryan, yelled. "The kids are freezing. We just need to dry off, maybe wait out the storm." I set the wine glass down on the railing. I hadn't planned this part. Not exactly. But the storm, the blackout, the timing, it felt like the universe had handed me a script I didn't know I'd written. I walked calmly down the stairs, barefoot on the stone steps, my steps slow, deliberate. At the front doors, I flipped on the exterior lights. The entire property lit up like a theater stage. The hedges gleamed wet. The gravel sparkled. And their faces were the best part. One by one, jaws dropped. Eyes widened. Recognition rippled through the crowd. They saw me. I opened the front door, just enough for the glow to frame my silhouette. I didn't step out. I didn't invite them in. I just looked at them. All of them. My cousins. Aunts. Uncles. People who had laughed when I wasn't included. People who hadn't noticed when I left. And then I said it, as calmly as a weather report. "I didn't think you'd make it here." The words hung in the air like smoke. Then I closed the door. Slowly. Firmly. Let them knock. Let them wait. Tonight, they weren't getting in. The knocking started after about a minute. Light at first, hesitant, like they weren't sure if this was real. Then louder. Faster. Desperate. I stood just inside the door, listening. "Tom, come on, it's us!" Someone shouted, probably my cousin Stephanie. "It's pouring out here!" Another voice, Uncle Steve, I think, called through the gate's intercom. "We didn't know it was your house. Just let us in, we'll explain." Explain what? That they didn't think I'd make it. That the family photo would somehow implode if I stood in it? That my presence was a footnote, an asterisk on their perfect family image? My silence was the only explanation I owed them. I walked back through the grand foyer, taking in the contrast. The warmth of the fireplace crackling in the lounge. The subtle hum of central heating. The bottle of wine breathing on the countertop. Everything chosen with care. Everything built by me. This house wasn't just a home, it was proof. That I didn't need them to be someone. That their approval, their empty praise, their passive-aggressive advice, had been nothing more than noise I learned to tune out. They had wanted a black sheep. I had given them a wolf. From the second-floor balcony, I watched again. Some of them had huddled under the hedges. A few had taken off their shoes. A kid was crying, and someone was arguing about whether to try the neighbor's place. But none of them left. They stayed, like they were waiting for a miracle. As if their past erasure could be undone with a little discomfort and an apology shouted through a gate. No. Tonight I wasn't the outcast. Tonight they were the ones left out in the cold. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, king-sized, untouched since morning, and let the rain speak for a while. It hammered the windows like it had a score to settle, like it had waited as long as I had to be heard. I thought back to every Christmas where my gift was an afterthought. Every family dinner where my achievements were skipped over so they could gush about someone's promotion, someone's engagement, someone's child's first piano recital. I remembered birthdays spent alone because plans got mixed up. I remembered the way even my quietest wins, like landing my first freelance client, or saving up for that rusty old car, were brushed aside with a polite nod and a change of subject. I wasn't bitter. I was practiced. Their neglect had become a sort of background music, always playing, never acknowledged. But I never stopped moving forward. I studied at night while flipping burgers during the day. I lived in studio apartments with peeling ceilings and dreams taped to the walls. I failed more times than I could count. But every time I got up. And now, they were standing in the rain outside a house they didn't know I built. A house they might have driven by, pointed at, and said, "Must be nice." I smiled, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Because this wasn't revenge. It was recognition. Recognition that I had become everything they never believed I could be, without needing them to notice. The intercom buzzed again. Then again. And then, after a few long seconds, my father's voice crackled through. "Son, it's your dad." I leaned against the wall, glass back in hand. The word son hit the air like it was meant to soften me. Like it hadn't been used as a weapon before. Like I hadn't been called a disappointment behind closed doors, told I was wasting my potential. Or worse, just wasting space. "We didn't mean to leave you out," he continued. "We just thought, well, you never really showed up to these things, so." A pause. A shuffle. Then he added, "Just let us in. It's cold." I pressed the intercom button. I didn't speak. Let the static carry the weight of all the things I could say. All the years they chose silence over support. All the moments I needed family, and got judgment instead. They had made their own warmth by pushing me out. Now they stood in the cold. Eventually, the static faded. The buzz fell silent. And in its place, only rain. I sat in the living room and turned on some soft jazz, something calm, elegant. The kind of music I'd listened to while writing code late at night in a cramped apartment, telling myself it wouldn't always be like that. And now it wasn't. But they were still trying to catch up to a version of me they never bothered to know. By now, the rain had found its rhythm. A relentless percussion on the windows, the kind that fills every quiet corner with its presence. From the warmth of the living room, I could see the faint glow of flashlights outside the gate, figures moving restlessly, jackets over heads, children crying into soaked sleeves. The longer they waited, the more I saw it, not just discomfort, but confusion. As if the rules had changed and they were the only ones who didn't get the memo. For once, they weren't in control. For once, I held the keys. There was movement near the gate. Ryan, my cousin with the perfect jawline and MBA, started pacing. His wife trailed behind, clutching their toddler, muttering something that looked like, "Let's just go." But they didn't. They never do. Not until they believe there's nothing left to gain. I went to the dining room. Laid out dinner for one. A steak, medium rare. Potatoes crisp just the way I liked. A Cabernet breathing in a decanter like it had nowhere else to be. I didn't light candles. That would have been theatrical. But I made a point of pulling the blinds wide open. Let them see. I ate slowly. Intentionally. And I thought about the boy I used to be, sitting at the kids' table every Thanksgiving, even when I was 21. The one who they said, just didn't apply himself. Who brought a side dish once and overheard it called cute. The one who, no matter what he did, was always a little too strange, too quiet, too unnecessary. At some point, there was a knock on the gate. Not the buzzer, an actual knock. It was Stephanie. I could see her clearly under the porch light. Her hair was plastered to her forehead, mascara streaked from her eyes. She looked older than I remembered, like something had collapsed inward in her face. She leaned into the intercom. "Tom, please. The kids are soaked. We just want to come in for a little while. We didn't know this was yours. Nobody told us. If we had known..." She trailed off. If we had known, I mouthed. If they had known it was me in this house, they would have included me. Not out of love, but calculation. I didn't press the intercom this time. Just walked slowly back to the front door, opened it again. All heads turned. They saw me again, this time framed in warm yellow light, a silhouette with a wine glass and a calm, unreadable face. I stepped just beyond the door. The rain didn't touch me. "You know," I said softly, "I used to stand on the edge of crowds just like this, hoping someone would wave me in. Say they saved me a seat. Asked me how I was doing, Not out of obligation, but care. A beat of silence. I stopped hoping a long time ago. But I remember everything. I scanned their faces, Stephanie's, Uncle Steve's, Ryan's, my father's. And I smiled. You left me out of the photo. Some of them began to speak. But I raised a hand. Don't. Not tonight. Tonight's not for explanations. Then I tilted the wine glass toward the storm. I didn't think you'd make it here. And I stepped back inside, closed the door, and locked it, quietly. With finality. The kind that echoes. They didn't leave right away. I watched through the surveillance monitors tucked discreetly in the den, watching them shuffle like shadows under the porch light, soaked, humiliated, still hoping the script would change. That maybe I'd open the door again, this time with a laugh, say I was just joking, usher them in with blankets and cocoa and forgiveness. But I wasn't joking. And forgiveness? That's not a currency you offer up just because someone finally sees you. They had spent a lifetime teaching me I didn't belong. And now, here I was, proof that I never needed their permission in the first place. Inside, the warmth was almost surreal. The fire crackled gently in the hearth. Soft instrumental jazz filled the background, flowing through hidden speakers built into the walls. My house was quiet. My house was steady. My house was mine. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time, just a few years back, when I ate canned soup on a floor mattress, the ceiling dripping in the winter, the radiator barely working. I used to code until sunrise, my hands numb, eyes bloodshot, fueled by instant coffee and spite. I didn't chase luxury. I chased freedom. And that freedom, well, it looked a lot like this: the right to decide who gets to come in and who stays out in the rain. Around midnight, the first ones gave up. I saw Ryan escorting his wife and child down the driveway, head bowed. And Melody followed, muttering something I couldn't make out, wiping her glasses with her sleeve. One by one, the rest began to trickle away, their silhouettes vanishing down the long hill road, leaving puddles in their wake. All except for one. My father. He remained at the gate. His jacket was pulled tight, one hand braced against the iron bars like it was the only thing keeping him upright. For a while, he didn't move. Just stared at the mansion, the windows glowing faintly behind the sheer curtains. I wondered what he saw. Regret? A challenge? A stranger? Eventually, he turned to go, but not before reaching out to press the intercom one last time. No words this time. Just the buzz. I didn't answer. I let it ring into nothing. Because there's a kind of closure in silence, the kind you don't get from yelling or slamming doors. The kind that says this story is over, and I'm the one who closed the book. Back inside, I poured another glass. Not out of celebration, but acknowledgement. I wasn't the boy on the sidelines anymore. I was the man behind the gates. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing a seat at their table. I'd built my own. The rain eased sometime around 2 a.m., but I didn't sleep. Not because I was restless, but because I didn't need to. I sat by the massive living room window, one leg tucked under me, wrapped in a soft throw blanket I'd bought during a solo trip to Copenhagen 2 years ago. The house smelled like cedar and old ambition. Outside, the wet streets glistened under the halo of street lamps, and puddles reflected a world that had finally flipped. It hit me then, how much time I'd spent wanting things I never really needed. Their validation. Their inclusion. Their attention. But attention is cheap. Inclusion is conditional. And validation from people who only see you when you succeed is just a spotlight, not love. What I had now wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming space. I'd built this life with no handouts, no applause, and definitely no shortcuts. Every wall in this house was raised by choices they didn't see, quiet ones. The nights I stayed in while others went out. The deals I chased that failed. The years of second-hand cars, take-out leftovers, and holding my breath each time rent was due. They saw none of it. And that's the irony, they'll tell you they always believed in you, but only after you've won. People like them never show up for the climb, just the view from the top. I thought back to moments I hadn't remembered in years. The time I brought my prototype app to a family barbecue, excited to share it, and my uncle patted my shoulder and said, "That's cute. But you should probably get a real job." Or when I asked if anyone could loan me $500 to buy an old laptop I needed to get started, and the room went silent like I'd spoken in a foreign language. That silence taught me more than words ever could. And now they had knocked on my door, not for me, but for shelter. They hadn't come because they cared. They came because they were cold. I don't know if that's tragic or just predictable. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I stood up and walked the length of the house barefoot, lights dim, the quiet so deep I could hear the slow whirl of the ceiling fan. I passed the wall near the study where I kept my blueprint, an old cork board with tacks and scribbles, a road map of what I built. Not because I needed to remember where I came from, but to remind myself where they never dared to look. I stopped at the front door again, opened it. The driveway was empty. Just the sound of the wind and the smell of rain on concrete. No one left to plead. No one left to pretend. Just me, and everything they once said I'd never be. If you'd asked me years ago what I wanted most, I would have said belonging. A seat at their table. A laugh that reached the other end of the room. Now, I've learned that some tables aren't worth sitting at. If you're the one they forget to call, the one they talk over, the one left out of the photo, don't chase their acceptance. Build your own house. One with tall windows and thicker walls. Fill it with your own kind of warmth. The kind that doesn't ask for approval. Because one day, when the storm comes, they'll remember your name, not with love, but need. And you'll finally understand the power of walking away, and not looking back.